All right, so we're going to continue Sefer Tehilim, Perek Kaf Bet, chapter 22. We began to read from that chapter last week. It's a long chapter, so we're dividing it into three parts. Last week was part 1, this evening is part 2, and next week is Zat Hashem, part 3. I think that for this portion, I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction. It's very possible, quite possible, that those who go through this chapter will treat it as another chapter where David HaMelech talks about the horrors of persecution and how many people lose their lives, how sad it is to see so many innocent victims crying for help and no one coming out to help them. And it gives the appearance as though God has forsaken Chas v'Shalom. He's abandoned the scene, he's no longer around and involved. So it's also a tremendous loss for the Jewish people whenever they suffer, when lives are lost. But it's also the Chilul Hashem, the unfortunate desecration of God's name, the appearance of God not wanting to be involved. That's also a casualty, if we can use that word. So much is lost when the Koach of Hashem, the tremendous power of Hashem, is not seen. And we know that, of course, everything is for a good reason. We know that everything is from above. Nonetheless, the individuals themselves that carry out all the pogroms and all the persecutions are still guilty. They may be called messengers, as the Navi, as the prophet calls them, at least in one instance. They may be messengers, but they don't have to take this mission if they don't choose to. In other words, human beings have free will to behave, to act in certain ways that are either proper or not. It's up to them. Even though ultimately Hashem puts people together, those that need to go through some suffering, Hashem will put them together with those individuals who are capable and willing, more than willing, to hurt others. So the putting them together is made possible by Hashem. But the actual physical harm that one individual does to another is really up to him, to the one who's doing it. He doesn't have to do it. And if he doesn't do it, somebody else will do it. In other words, pain and suffering can come about in all kinds of ways. For another human being to perpetrate a crime, I mean, that's really completely in his free will. He doesn't have to, he's not obligated to do so, even though ultimately he's the messenger because Hashem knows he's going to do it. And throughout our history, there have been many such perpetrators, criminals of all kinds, that have committed tremendous atrocities against Jews and non-Jews alike. Humanity has suffered greatly. And millions upon millions of people have lost their life. Just World War II, which is recent history, at least 50 million people lost their life. I'm not even talking about those who were injured. And all the tremendous, forget about the financial loss, the tremendous pain and suffering, the everlasting scars that it caused. So, unfortunately, throughout history, if one reads history, one learns it well, he can see that time after time, just about in every continent, all over the place, people have suffered from all kinds of war and persecution and blood libels and the like. And what I want to do now, before I begin at the second portion of the Perek, is take you briefly, just briefly, through some examples of what has happened throughout Jewish history. It's not only Jewish history, but through the annals of history. And just about every country, every part of the world that you can imagine, throughout the history, almost every other year, there's issues, problems, as we call it in Hebrew, tsarot. Tsarot means troubles of all kinds. There's many expulsions. There's an expulsion from Yerushalayim, of course. There's an expulsion from Alexandria. There's an expulsion from France. Another one from France. From Spain. From Italy. From England there was an expulsion. People don't realize that even from England there was an expulsion. Property confiscated. Synagogue burnings. People burnt alive. Not once. Many, many times. I'm not going to quote to you here the years and all the places. I have 8 pages worth that I put together here of crimes against humanity, in this case against the Jewish people, who were already, for the most part, in the diaspora. Many, of course, are familiar with the destruction of the first temple, the destruction of the second temple. They're somewhat familiar with the Holocaust because it's recent history. What about the Crusades? Thousands and thousands of Jews were slaughtered on the way to Jerusalem. The Crusades was a war that the Christian Empire led against the Muslims. They wanted to conquer Jerusalem. And on the way, they said it's a mitzvah for them. That's how they called it, a mitzvah. You know, to burn the Jews, to slaughter them, to take their property away. And it's very depressing. If you read through the history, especially if you read it in detail, very, very depressing. Northern France, Germany, pogroms, massacres, Jews burned alive. This is, I'm talking about in the early part of the 11 and 1200s. I'm not talking about recent history. Property confiscated, rioting. I'm not even mentioning here all the decrees against not observing Shabbat, burning down the synagogues, not allowing them to learn Torah, depending on the time and place. Talmud confiscated in France, the famous in the year 1240. Talmud burned in Paris. Mob attacks in Oxford, in Canterbury, mob attacks in London. In Vienna, Jews were forced to wear horned hats. I think it was in England, they were forced to pay thousands of dollars, well, those in that time, whatever it was, or they were killed, I think, I forget what it was, because of somebody blamed them for having killed a sick man. So a lot of Jews had to pay as a result of that. That whether it was true or not, who knows? Most likely it was not true. Forced conversions, massacres, burned alive, all over Europe. And this is just a brief synopsis of what went on in Europe. I'm not including the Muslim lands for two reasons. First of all, they're not as many. And second of all, we don't have the time to go through all the persecutions all over the world. But it did happen everywhere. Hungary, expulsion, mob attacks, mass slaughter in Prague in the year 1389, forced conversions, public torture and burning, public executions, expulsion, expulsion, expulsion from all kinds of places, also all the cities that you can imagine. Jews burned alive in Lisbon in the year 1647. Poland, 1648, a third of Jewry slaughtered during the infamous pogroms of Chmielnicki, 1648 and 1649. I think I recall 300,000 Jews were killed, 300 communities destroyed. Stake burnings, more expulsions, public torture, Talmud burning. In Kiev, 1768, 3,000 Jews slaughtered. Bucharest, 1801, a mob attack. Mob attack after another. Pogroms in Poland in the beginning of the 20th century. There was a lot of pogroms there. And of course, the Holocaust. The list goes on. And the reason why I give you this brief introduction into the history, a little bit of the history of Jewish persecution, is so people should become aware that not only has this been ongoing, that there's something behind it. This doesn't just happen by itself. I have a whole lecture about anti-Semitism as to what the reasons are. And people come up with all kinds of ideas to try to explain it. It doesn't pay to figure it out using logic, because it's not logical. It can't be any logical. It has happened everywhere that the Jew was singled out. It's written in the Torah, number one. If one learns the Torah properly, he will see what brings about this enmity, this hatred amongst the non-Jews towards us. In other words, we bring it about ourselves through the various actions that we do. And this is all a siman mishamayim. It's supposed to be a signal from heaven that something is not right with us, even though something is not right with them, right? But they don't have the Torah to guide them. We have the Torah supposedly to guide us. And if we're not being guided by the Torah, then obviously there's going to be all kinds of trouble. What this chapter deals with, therefore, at least a portion of it, is with a description that David HaMelech gives us. And he's seeing, of course, all of this Beruch HaKodesh. He's divinely inspired. He can see into the future. He's composing a prayer that will serve Jews throughout history. And it's not just a prayer. It's to realize that something is going on. And it's not just that you can't trust them. That's not the point. There have been times where we've had good relations. There are quite a few Jews who were Hasidei Umot Olam, who were the righteous amongst the Gentiles. And of course, interspersed in all this, you have tremendous miracles of God's protection. But we still have to point out the difficult times. We still have to point to the hatred that exists out there, to what the human being is capable of doing. And that when a Jew sees this, he should realize that this is not just something of a whim. In other words, that they just don't like us because either we're wealthy or some other excuse. It's all mishamayim. Nonetheless, we still have to do something about it. It doesn't mean that that's it. It's going to be like that forever. There's still something that we need to do about it. And David HaMelech puts, of course, the greatest focus on prayer. On praying to Hashem, not only because prayer can be helpful, but prayer is what connects the Jew to Hashem. On the lowest level, at the very least, that you can do is pray and realize, wait a minute, this is happening because Hashem is not with me. And perhaps I better reach out to Him. Perhaps I should contact Him, pray to Him. And in this way, by praying, by forming this connection, a Jew is able to come back and realize his mistakes perhaps, and begin the process of teshuvah, of repentance. So we're holding now Pasuk Yud Bet, for those who want to follow. Verse 12. David HaMelech says, Al tirchak mimeni ki tzara kerova ki en ozer. David HaMelech says, not just about himself, but he's talking about the future, remember. Don't be distant from me. Ki tzara kerova, because the tzara, the troubles are so close. They're so close, meaning that if Hashem, you don't get involved right now, there's nothing going to be left, God forbid. Ki en ozer, and there's nobody else that we can turn to. So this is a time in our history, for the most part we're in the diaspora. We don't have our own country per se, we don't have our own Air Force, our own army, and even if we did, you can't beat everybody if they all gang up against you. As the Midrash says, the Jewish nation is compared to a sheep among 70 wolves. If it wouldn't be for the shepherd who drives away the wolves, how could the sheep survive? It's miraculous. So we need to turn to the shepherd. So David HaMelech is pleading with Hashem that at these times of tzara, where there appears to be unfortunately a hester panim, that God's face is concealed, as though He's not involved, He says, don't abandon us, because if chas v'shalom you do, there's nobody else that will fend for us. And therefore all we have is you. According to the Midrash, this pasuk was later on said by Esther. Esther, the queen, is about to go into Achashverosh without permission. Remember when we read the Megillah? That means that she's risking her life. In those days, the king, even though this was the queen, they had some, as we call it in Yiddish, a meshugas. In other words, they had some crazy habit or edict that the queen cannot come when she wants. And he's a strange, foolish king, because later on he says, Esther, at chatzia malchut, I'll give you half, right? Whatever you want, up to half I give you. So, here he's being so generous and so large, and here we're told, from reading the Megillah, it's not too evident, but we're told that it was a risky effort on her part to go in without being called, coming on her own. So Esther, Midrash says, said this pasuk when she went in, that Hashem, please, al tirchak mimeni, ki tzara kerova, I'm in trouble. I'm doing this because we have no choice. En ozer. She said this pasuk. And of course, after that, the Midrash goes on to explain a little bit more in detail, which we don't see in the Megillah, as to what happened, how, even though she risked her life, everything went okay, went well for her. David HaMelech continues on to say, from all the tzarot that we have, or that are coming, he's looking into the future, Sevavuni parim rabim abirei vashan kiteruni. And I found this pasuk very, very interesting. Nobody commented on this. Loosely translated means, I'm surrounded by bulls. Abirei vashan kiteruni, I'm being cornered, if you want to use the word cornered, or also surrounded from all sides by the strong cattle of the Bashan. Abirei Bashan. Surrounded by cattle, by bulls. I mean, he's not even saying there's no bears, there are no lions, they're dangerous animals. Why use parim? What kind of a term? What kind of a danger is bulls? Abirei Bashan, all of a sudden you're surrounded by bulls. Why use bulls? So the commentators tell us that for some reason the nations of the world, sometimes at least, are described as bulls. The strong ones. Why? Because you could say that the bulls are strong. A bull is a big animal, it's not a small animal, and it's dangerous. You start up with it. Could be, but what I was thinking about is not into an ordinary bull. After all, David HaMelech uses here the term Abirei Bashan. There are certain animals, you may not be familiar with them, but there are certain animals that are from the same family of cattle, even though they're not necessarily related, but they look like them. And they go by different names. One of them is buffalo, which you heard of. One of the most dangerous animals in Africa is called the Cape buffalo. Very, very dangerous animals. A lot more people get killed in Africa every year from Cape buffaloes and from hippos than they do from lions or from something else. Dangerous animal. Now, what's the danger? The danger is not that he's going to bite you. The danger is he's going to gore you. They have very, very powerful horns. They're very, very robust, very, very strong animals. And he may trample you too. Stay away. Keep your distance, they tell you, when you see it, because you don't know. But you know what's strange about these animals? These animals are unpredictable. He may be looking at you like this from a distance, and all of a sudden he attacks. You know, a lion, they say, if he's not hungry, he won't attack you. A tiger doesn't care if he's hungry or not, he always attacks. Different animals react differently, but usually an animal will stay away. From human beings, usually wild animals don't necessarily look for contact. They don't want to get injured themselves, unless they're hungry. A Cape buffalo and some other animals of similar nature and size may attack all of a sudden out of nowhere. But what's interesting about their attack is that sometimes they don't attack by themselves, they attack together with a whole group. They've been known to kill lions. They've been known to kill lions sometimes, especially if they gang up more than one. The lions not only have to run away, right? The lions, of course, have to let go of the little calf that they may have grabbed, because they will come and protect their little calves. They will surround the little calf. They will go after the lion, after any enemy. Now, even though he may not have here Cape buffalo in mind, but when he talks about Parim Rabim and Abirei Bashan, especially Abirei Bashan, the strong ones, that Kiteruni, which means that they come from all sides, it means we're not talking about one. A lion, as a solitary animal, can attack by himself. And a tiger, for sure, is much more solitary, because lions live in prides. So you can have various lions together attack an animal, whereas you don't have many tigers attacking. So here you're talking about many, Abirei Bashan, Sevavuni Parim Rabim, many of this bull, powerful bull, not just any bull, have surrounded me. So they're coming together as a large group. And who is he talking about? He's talking about the nations of the world. So here, you're talking about a description of nations who do not necessarily kill, but they may drive us away as a result of their power. Parim rabim, abirei bashan kiteruni. He doesn't say about killing here. He doesn't mention the word they kill. They are capable of killing, but no. They have driven. They can drive away even a lion. So he's describing what? What I just read to you. Being driven away. All kinds of situations where a powerful enemy, and many, many gangs of them, will come and try to drive Jews away. Who could he be referring to? Not necessarily to a kingdom where there is a king in an army, because that's killing. He's talking about mobs. He's talking about uchlusya oyenet, as we would call it in Hebrew. He's talking about a population or a mob of people who doesn't like the Jew, who will gang up on him and will drive him away from town. And what did I just read? A whole list of such incidents that occurred. Mobs, expulsions, not necessarily massacres. We haven't dealt with that yet. All kinds of situations that have repeated itself throughout history, where you had parim rabim abirei bashan, powerful mobs, populations that were unpredictable, that yesterday they didn't bother you. They were harmless. They did business with you. Neighbors. And all of a sudden, kiteruni, they surrounded me. And that was enough to drive them away. My great-grandfather, one of them, in Poland was once walking down the street, and a Polish non-Jew threw a stone at him and yelled at him in Polish, Żyd, which is a derogatory term for a Jew, go to Palestine. He threw a rock. He got a black and blue mark. He came home and tells his wife, could you imagine? A non-Jew has to remind me that I belong in Israel? He took it and says, Simam Yashamayim. I'm packing up my bags, and you're helping me, of course, and we're leaving. And they left, and that is how they survived. Otherwise, they would have been gone in the Holocaust like many of their relatives. Many of my relatives on my father's side did not make it. My grandfather, Baruch Hashem, my father's father, realized on time, of course, Min HaShamayim, that they better leave. And he tried to convince Jews everywhere, wherever he went, get out of here. Can't you feel and sense that the time is running out? That something is about to happen? Somehow he felt it. There were some who felt it, and he felt it, but he did not just act on his own. He tried to convince as many as he can. Some people were convinced and some not. One of his brothers was about to board the boat. At the end he says, nah, maybe I'll go later. He changed his mind and he got killed. He never made it. A lot of Jews, unfortunately, did not make it, did not leave, did not have enough time to leave by the time they realized. So anyway, Min HaShamayim, some people were miraculously saved. Now, Abirei Bashan, the strong ones, are not mobs. Mobs are not strong. They're just large numbers. So who could he be talking about when he says Abirei Bashan, the strong ones? It could be that he's talking about strong leaders. In the olden days, the church had tremendous power. So Abirei Bashan could be referencing the bishops. Sometimes all it took was a bishop, one bishop, to convince the mob, to convince the people that, the Jews killed our God, as they say, and we got to take revenge. Even though it doesn't say anywhere in the Bible that you take revenge for that. How do you kill a god? The whole thing doesn't make so much sense. But it was just an excuse. Any excuse. The blood libel is the biggest excuse of all. The Jews are not supposed to eat blood. It's prohibited to eat blood. And to kill a human being and to get his blood to bake it in matzah, that's preposterous. And guess what? People actually believe it. So that comes to show you that people will believe almost anything. Because somehow it justifies what they want to do, and that is to kill and to rob. So they'll look for any excuse. All right, so we described one type of persecution. That is of bulls surrounding us, threatening us, driving us out, their leaders going after us. Next pasuk, Patsu alai pihem aryeh toref veshoeg. Now we're talking about wild animals, indeed. Now we're talking about aryeh toref veshoeg. So patsu alai pihem means they opened up their mouth like to swallow us. Who? Like who? Like an aryeh toref veshoeg, like a lion who ravages. You know, he takes apart the meat and he roars. Not all animals roar. A lion roars, a tiger roars. It's a special vocalization sound that he emits. And a lion, the male lion especially, you could hear his roar for 5 miles. From a distance of 5 miles. Why do they roar? That's one of the ways they communicate. And they have different kinds of roars that only lions understand, of course. Whether there's danger here, or there's food, or there's their roar perhaps after they finished eating, that they're so happy and proud. The lion is proud of what he did. Different kinds of roars. So aryeh toref veshoeg. And this sha'aga, this roar, is scary. People are afraid of it. So these enemies, some of them, this is the way they acted. As lions about to tear apart their prey, and after they did, they were happy. They didn't regret it. They were actually happy and proud of what they did. David HaMelech is describing a scene in the future. Now, even though this scene was in his time too, possible, but he's definitely describing scenes that will unfortunately repeat themselves too many times, of enemies who tore their victims apart and were very, very happy in doing that. כמים נשפכתי והתפרדו כל עצמותיי, היה ליבי כדונג נמס בתוך מעי. This is a very interesting pasuk. He says, now describing either himself or those victims, unfortunately, in the future who will be exposed to all these dangers. It says, "Kamayim nishpachti," I'm being spilled or poured like water. What is he describing here? What else is poured like water? Blood. So much blood was shed. And it was shed kamayim. Why describe it like water? Why not just say blood? Because water is cheap, and so is Jewish blood. Kamayim nishpachti, like it's nothing to them. But it's blood. It's a human being. No, it's water. It's subhumans. Kamayim nishpachti, poured like water. And what else happened? Or what else will happen? David HaMelech is saying, "Vitparedu kol atzmotai," and all my bones will break up, fall apart. Bones fall apart. What is he talking about over here? This is a description of trauma. Vitparedu kol atzmotai is trauma. Ask anybody who was at war, a soldier in the Israeli army, especially in the Yom Kippur War. He'll tell you what trauma is. If you're sitting here and all of a sudden a bomb falls a few feet away from you and kills a few people. They have this trauma for the rest of their life. They were not touched physically, but they have trauma. Do you know how many Holocaust survivors have nightmares? It's gone. It's finished. Years ago it's gone. No more Holocaust. No, they have this trauma. that's going after them. Hitparedu kol atzmotai. Now, even though Hitparedu kol atzmotai is talking about at the actual time that this may happen, the fear that will envelop them, that it will break apart, shatter their bones. Even though they're alive, they're not being killed. But so what? This is worse than being killed. Their bones are falling apart. Haya libi kadonag names betoch me'ai. My heart was like wax, melting inside my innards, my insides. A heart melting like wax. What's that supposed to be? Anybody want to guess this one? What do we get from the heart besides that it pumps blood? Huh? What does the heart do?
Sometimes you're so afraid your heart is coming down.
And then what happens? So you're scared, okay. But that, you already said that with the bones, that he's scared. The heart is the source of courage and strength to be able to fight, to be able to defend yourself. Right? No. Unfortunately, David HaMelech says, this heart will melt away like wax. It will not be able to fight. It will not have the courage. It will be fearful. Is that familiar? The answer is yes. The Torah says that when the Jewish people do not do what is expected of them, unfortunately, when they're being pursued by their enemies, there will be times where one enemy will pursue 1,000 Jews. How does one pursue 1,000? Let them all gang up on him. And the same question was asked about the Holocaust survivors. You had one SS guard lead you, and you didn't do anything about it? We didn't have the courage. We were hopeless. We didn't have the stamina to fight. It's all min hashamayim. That's also an onish min hashamayim, punishment shamayim. You will not resist. There were partisans, of course. There was a ghetto uprising, of course. There were some that did fight back, but the vast majority did not. That's also min hashamayim. Their heart melts like wax. Unfortunately. However, it could also be that David HaMelech is also referring to another aspect of the heart, and that is the emunah. And the reason I want to add this, even though nobody mentions this, is because there is a midrash that uses this pasuk, references this pasuk, concerning the Egyptian soldiers in Yam Suf. When the soldiers of Egypt saw the miracles, their heart melted, their faith melted in their God. Our gods are fake gods. Look at this God. So that was a positive melting of their heart, melting of their faith, of their wrong faith. Unfortunately, when terrible tzarot, troubles, come about, many weak Jews, whose emunah was weak to begin with, melt. David HaMelech is concerned about them. How are they going to react? Not everybody's strong. Not everybody's proud of his heritage and is able to resist all the pressures, to give it up. There will be some whose heart, whose emunah may melt. But the simple meaning here is the lack of courage. Yavesh kacheres kochi uleshoni mudbak mal kochai vela'afar mavet tishbeteni. Also very enigmatic pasuk. Loosely translated, it means my strength has dried up like clay. My tongue is stuck to my palate. You know what the palate, above and below the tongue, you have a palate. So when the mouth dries, it's like the tongue is stuck either up or down. It doesn't really move. So my leshoni mudbak mal kochai, to the palate. V'la'afar mavet tishbeteni, and you've sent me to the dust of death. Also very strange description of how to send somebody to his death. I mean, what kind of a language is that? But I think, really, if David HaMelech is talking about the future, he's describing all kinds of scenarios where you can see all of this. The Midrash says about the first part of the pasuk that David HaMelech says, "I'm completely dry, and therefore I can't speak or pray." That he sees the suffering of Mashiach. He actually sees what Mashiach, according to Midrash, Mashiach will be suffering. He will be taking upon himself the pain and suffering of the Jewish people. And we don't understand how that works. How does a human being take upon himself the pain? It's not to be interpreted as the Christians interpret, that somebody took upon himself the pain of humanity or as an atonement. No, we're not talking about that. David HaMelech is just expressing his inability to do anything in light of the fact that in the future, way down in the future, right before Mashiach comes, our times, that this individual Mashiach will be going through tremendous pain. So Yavesh kacheres kochi, I'm completely dry, I have nothing to say. What am I going to say now? My tongue is stuck. My mouth is dry. I can't pray, I can't say anything. And this is true even about the Jews, that many, many times they couldn't say anything. They couldn't stop to pray. They were being driven out. They were being killed, massacred by the mobs. They didn't even have a chance. They're completely in shock. But what about the last one? Vela'afar mavet tishbeteni. You know, many times when a nation goes to war, people get killed. How? Well, today it's by bullets and missiles and tanks. In the old days, it was with arrows and swords and spears, knives, and with the hand. So that is an act of war. As a result of war and battle, people get killed. Mobs, also, people get killed. So we already know that there's all kinds of situations where Jews unfortunately lost their life as a result of all kinds of tzarot. They were thrown into the ocean. They were burnt alive. You know, all kinds, we know all of that. What could Vela'afar mavet tishbeteni could be referencing? Again, it means loosely translated, and to the dust of earth you have placed me. The word tishbeteni, place me, is a very unusual word because tishbeteni is more like putting a pot on top of the fire. That's where the word tishbeteni is used. What do you mean? You're going to take a human being and put him to the dust of the earth like you put a pot on the top of the fire? What's the connection? Well, if you read about World War II, hundreds of Jews were lined up and forced to dig their own grave and shot into their grave directly. They weren't killed as an act of war. They were massacred next to the grave. Vela'afar mavet tishbeteni, on the edge of the bore, of the ditch that they themselves were forced to dig, the Germans shot them. So it's like taking somebody and putting him on the fire, like a pot on the fire. It's not that they died in war, where they were fighting. It's not that they even were driven away and died of hunger, which happened too. All kinds of deaths. But World War II, there was mitot meshunot, there was some unusual kinds of deaths and atrocities that never did the world record. Where little babies were thrown against the wall and smashed. Vela'afar mavet tishbeteni, like putting a pot on the fire. You took them directly legei hahariga, to the valley of death, to the ditch, to the trench. And you can include in this pasuk, or in this portion, that they were burnt in the ovens to afar, to dust. Otherwise, why say afar? Just say mavet. Who needs the word afar here? Even though it means to the grave, you could say to the ground. But I think that David HaMelech is describing all kinds of events in the future, of all kinds of scenarios, and all kinds of tragedies. This is what happened. And we're looking back, and we have lists and lists and lists of events that took place that includes and describes perfectly what he's talking about. So unfortunately, Vela'afar mavet tishbeteni. Now, David HaMelech did say that there were some close calls. So if you want to say that this is only a close call, it never actually happened. Lafar mavet ishpetenu, barely, I'm already on the ground. But nothing, Baruch Hashem, happened at the end. Yes, he said that in the past, that he's been in great danger, and at the last moment Hashem has helped him. Here, I don't really think he's talking about that. Because he's talking about the worst kinds of scenarios. Kamaim nishpachti, I mean, even though there were situations where Jews went through tremendous trauma, and Baruch Hashem, at least they stayed alive. Yes, he described that too. But he's also describing the worst case scenario, where people were killed. They were killed in a brutal way. In other words, not even in an act of war, but directly massacred, just for being Jewish. Okay, we've spoken about powerful nations, powerful leaders, mobs. Now he's talking, and bulls, they're all called bulls or strong bulls. So why now is he going to Kisevavuni Kelavim? Now we're done with the bulls and we're done with the lions and we're going to the dogs. Kisevavuni Kelavim. You know what comes to my mind when we talk about dogs? Not all dogs are pit bulls. There are poodles also. Oh, those very cute poodles. Wouldn't you want to have one? A poodle. They're also called kelavim. Right? There's some very cute poodles out there, but they're not so cute. Kisevavuni kelavim. He says, David HaMelech, I see situations in the future where people, in other words, Jews, will be surrounded by dogs. Obviously, he doesn't mean poodles. He means here wild dogs. Dogs that go and attack. Now, a dog doesn't eat human flesh. Usually not. Usually not. He can. He's capable of eating meat. So why would a dog go after someone? The dog is not being threatened. Did you ever go through a house where there's a dog and he started barking at you? You didn't do anything. You didn't bother him. And he's barking at you. Get lost. I don't want to see you. That's the appearance the dog gives us. I don't want you around here. I didn't do anything to you. Let me go through. No, I'm going to bark. I always wonder. Kisevavuni klavim. Dogs will bark, will threaten you, will go after you, surround you, even though you didn't do anything to them. So who's this? Klavim are not as powerful as the ones before. We're talking about the people who are really, really low. They are the dogs. The amcha, the populace, not necessarily respectable people, not necessarily powerful people, the ones that have nothing better to do, the ones that will buy into any excuse that they're told. They're acting like dogs. They're barking lies. We didn't do anything. We didn't harm them. We were good to them. We were kind to them. Now, the only difference here the only thing that I would add to this is that even though they say a dog is a man's best friend, that's if it's your dog, not somebody else's dog. They say that with cats, they'll scratch you even though you fed them. You took care of them, they still scratch you. A dog is really man's best friend. I can assure you, a dog, if he's your dog, almost regardless of the kind of dog, they're good, they're devoted. But that's if it's your dog. Somebody else's dog can be very dangerous. We've heard many stories. And here it's not one dog, it's many dogs. Dogs are called chatzufim in the language of the Gemara. They have chutzpah, they're impudent. They bark just for the sake of barking. They go after you just for the sake of threatening you. You know, there are certain animals, one of them is a wolf, a mountain lion. There's several, maybe even a leopard to an extent, I don't know, that if they go into a chicken corral, they will kill all the chickens, even though they only need to eat one. They'll just go just for the sake of attacking, you know. That's kilavim. Certain kilavim, that's what they do. They just bark, and they threaten, and he's describing the people who are not necessarily powerful, the people who are way down below in the level of power or influence. Many of the mobs, that's what they were, just klavim, nothing better to do. You know, in those days they didn't have movies. It's too bad. They would have been busy with movies. They would have been busy with the Super Bowl. They would have been busy with the soccer, with the Olympics, with the game. Today, the people are busy with those things. Imagine if they didn't have these things today, there would be a revolution in this country too. Yes, there would. This is keeping their minds busy. Entertainment, it's called. Hollywood. Big business too. Those days, they didn't have this. So what was in their entertainment? Let's get the Jew. Sevavuni kilavim. Adat mer'imi kifuni. Who has surrounded me? I'm surrounded by adat, a congregation, a flock, a whole group of mer'im, evildoers. Mer'im is evildoers. In other words, they're not even kilavim. They're worse. These are people who are bad. The biryonim, as we would call them in Hebrew. The pushtakim, the criminals, the mera'im, the ones who just want to do bad. That's all their intention is. Even though they know we don't deserve it. Even though they know this guy is innocent. Adat mera'im ekifuni, I'm being surrounded by bad people, by evildoers. When? Many times. Not once in history. Many times this repeated itself. The last words of this pasuk, Kari yadai v'raglai. Now here, I challenge you to try to figure this one out. It simply means, like a lion, I'm being attacked. And what is being attacked? My hands and feet. That's very puzzling. And I want to warn you, don't read a non-Jewish Bible here, because the chances are that you will read the word kari as the word thorns. Many in the church, Catholics or Christians, want to use this last words, kari, as proof, they claim, that Yeshu was nailed to the cross. See? It says kari. Like thorns, like nails were put into his hands. Yadai v'raglai. It says the hands and feet. So there were thorns in his hands and feet. He's suffering. The poor guy is suffering, and he has thorns. Kari, thorns? Yes, King James Bible, if I recall. I don't remember which one. That's what he says. No Jewish text has this kind of a word for thorns. It's, first of all, thorns, you don't say kari. And ari, we know what ari means. Ari is an aryeh, it's a lion. And he said that before, and he said it many times. You see how dangerous it is not to read the original text, not to know Hebrew? Because if somebody comes over to you and says, I have proof that that the Messiah was put on the cross. I says, well, I know that he was. I know the Romans used to do that. You don't have to convince me. First of all, I'm not convinced that he's the Messiah. But all right, you claim that he was he was nailed. It's a historical fact. Fine, the Romans used to do that. But who tells you to infer that from this? This has nothing to do with it. It says the hands and feet, he tells you, and it says thorns. No, it doesn't. Here, let's look at the original. And he'll agree with you that the Hebrew is the original. What does it say? It says kari. Kari is thorns. Since when is kari thorns? Kari is lying. So you have to be careful. Always first of all, look at the context. Whenever you're asked a question that appears to be misleading, look at the context. What's the context here? The context is not talking about crucifixion here. It's being surrounded by dogs, wild animals, perhaps, lions. Then what does hands and feet have to do with it? I'm surprised that nobody said anything about this. They just say that David HaMelech, describing the future, says that unfortunately the Jewish people will be surrounded by dogs, criminals, kari yadai v'raglai, like a lion about to attack my hands and feet. My hands and feet. Why would he attack the hands and feet? He attacks the entire body. So this is my explanation, the Fianiyutati. What he's saying here is like this. He's talking about a situation where the Jew has no way to protect himself or the ability to run away. How do you protect yourself with your hands? How do you run away with your feet? That's what he's saying. Perhaps, I'm saying. Kari, who's about to attack me, And when a lion attacks you, you can't defend yourself with your hand like you can from a dog. Your hands, you're going to use your hands against the lion? You're not Shimshon HaGibor. Only he was able to. So therefore, Kari, yes, when the lion comes, I can't use my hands. And my feet, I cannot outrun the lion either. So he's talking about a situation where the Jew will not be able to run away. He will not be able to defend himself. There were times where they told him, scram, leave, get lost. Good. At least he can go and start all over again somewhere else. Sometimes they didn't give him that option. It was kari, yadai v'raglai. My hands couldn't defend myself against the mobs, against the strong criminals, and my feet were not fast enough to get away. You see why it pays sometimes to analyze the pasuk a little bit more and see what is he telling me here? Why is that this choice of word here and not something else? Asaper kol atzmotai hema yabitu yerubi. This one is also very interesting. It says, I will count my bones. Since when do people count their bones? That's what he's saying. Asaper kol, I will count all my bones. After the enemy is done with me, that's what he really means. The enemy is done with him. I will look around and see how much is left of me. So really, he's describing a situation where the Jew, unfortunately, will be facing enemies, and there will be barely anything left of him. So he will count how many bones there are left. So he's describing a terrible scene of being attacked, but maybe he's just injured and he's going to stay alive. So asaper kol atzmotai, I will count my bones. But I want to add, again, this is just an addition of describing a scene that only today we know what it looks like because we have pictures of it and movies of people who were so hungry that you could see their bones and how many those bones are. Have you ever seen somebody emaciated, they call it in English? Yeah? Yeah, in the Holocaust. And this is also true in the past. But we didn't have pictures. There's a description that they were so hungry that you can see their bones. Now we have pictures of asaper kol atzmotai. I can count the bones in his body. I can see them. Perhaps. And after the goyim, after those wild individuals were done with us, hema yabitu yirubi. They will look at me and they will stare at me, or they will stare at me and look at me. What's the difference between looking and staring? I mean, it means the same thing, but obviously he's saying two separate things. Yabitu. Who's yabitu? Yabitu really means to stare. Stare means to look at a situation and not get involved. You're staring at it. There will be many people who will not want to get involved, who will stay at the sidelines. Yabitu. And the American government is guilty of this. They knew how many people were being killed, and they could have done something about it. They could have stopped it, and they didn't. An entire boat, or more than one boat, came over to this country with survivors who ran away. They sent them back to be killed in the camps. How are they going to face Hashem? And what are they going to say to that? We didn't have room for them? Well, what's going to be, I'm curious, what's going to be the excuse? Yabitu means to stare and to wonder and to be aware, yes, and not do anything about it. So that, of course, we're not just talking about this country, which has many, many great things too. Right? I'm not just criticizing. This is the leader of democracy, and this country did, of course, go after the evil in the end, together with Britain. Nonetheless, there were times they stood on the sidelines. And history is able to judge. A lot of this is recorded. That some things, of course, were done wrong. And it's only fair and right to criticize and to learn from mistakes. So I'm not necessarily knocking anyone here. I'm just pointing out a fact, a historical fact. That's very, very sad. Because if you really think more into it, where does this come from? If not from evil, from a lack of interest for other human beings. To be concerned about your own interests, that's very, very nice, but what about the welfare of others? And the fathers of this country, of course, were very, very different than that. On the contrary, freedom for all human beings are created equal. And they practice pretty much what they preach to an extent. The fathers of the Constitution, the original leaders. But anyway, leaders come in different forms and shapes. Some were great and some were not. So here you have Hema Yabitu, you have a lot of people that will look, do nothing, or they will even cooperate with the enemy. You had that too. They didn't necessarily do the killing themselves, but they cooperated. The guy is hiding over here. Or they handed over the Jew. Yabitu, that's also not good, just to stare and do nothing. Yir'ubi, what's that? They will look at me? Yeah, they will look at me and make fun of me. So they will see the poor guy being abused in all kinds of ways, and they will laugh. They will make fun, poke fun at him. That's called yir'u, to look at, to see. See what? See in his, unfortunately, his misery. Not only not do anything, but make fun of that. They're all going to have to give an accounting for every little detail that David HaMelech is here describing. Everything is being recorded. You stood by, did nothing, and you could have. You were laughing and making fun. You actually participated in the killing. You helped. Right? You gave information. Whatever. Everything is being recorded. Yechaleku begadai lahem. Many times the Goyim went after, what are we going to go after for? We don't want to just kill them. No, they want to rob them. Yechaleku begadai lahem. They're going to take away my clothes. Ve'alevushi yapilu goral. And they will throw lots on as to who gets my clothing, my garments. What's going on here? We're talking about clothes all of a sudden? Yes. Sometimes it's not about the physical body. No. God forbid, we won't kill him. But we'll take everything from him. Why clothing? Many, many times the Jews were forced to pay a fine. They came to the community. If you don't come up with $100,000, we drive you out, or we take away your properties, or we kill you, whatever. They were forced to pay. Many, many times they didn't kill them. They were forced to pay. As they say in English, they took their shirt off their back. They took everything. Yechaleku begadai lahem. That's what he's talking about. Otherwise, why mention the clothing? They're just after clothing? Yes, you can say they're after the booty. At times of war, they take everything. But here it's to dispossess us. And not necessarily to kill us. But this they did too. We were nice to you. We let you live. Yeah, but you didn't give us equal rights. You didn't let us do work. You limited us, you restricted us, you made us pay heavy fines. They even had a contest. Who's going to get this? In other words, they made a whole game out of it. A contest of who will get this particular house. I get this, you get that. In other words, it became official. Yapilu Gorah means they made it official. It wasn't random. Sometimes it's random. No, it was not random. They actually made a whole contest about it. I just want to finish with a good pasuk. That's why I want to learn the next pasuk, but we'll continue next week. It's always good to finish on a positive note. So David HaMelech says, after describing to us all kinds of scenes, terrible scenes in the future especially, Bata Adonai al tirhak. He's calling out to Hashem, please don't be distant, don't stay away too far, because that's what Hester Panim, as we began to explain last week, is all about, that God appears to give the impression that He conceals Himself. So David HaMelech says, don't do that, don't stay far away. Eyaluti le'ezrati husha. Eyaluti means as we said before, Eli, Eli, my strength. David HaMelech says, my strength, calling out to Hashem to be involved. In other words, show your strength, show your power, demonstrate that you're in charge. Let's see a miracle. Come out and save us and protect us. Lezati husha, come out quickly. Help us, husha, quickly. Why quickly? Why add the word quickly? Not only because time is running out and unfortunately many people lost their life, but Husha also means that Chaz v'Shalom, if Hashem does not come on time, how many Jews will be left? Chaz v'Shalom. In other words, David HaMelech is saying, you better speed it up, hurry. Otherwise, they have the ability to, who knows, to cause tremendous amount of damage. So David HaMelech is asking and praying, Hashem, don't let this go on forever. You can add, you can easily add that David HaMelech is referencing the final redemption, and he has many, many times, that ultimately bring about the complete redemption. It's not just an Ezra, even though he is not talking about the final Yeshua and the Geulah, because he doesn't use those words, he's using the word Ezra, help. But you can say that he's referring to come and speed up the Geulah, the final redemption, when all of this will stop. And for those who thought that this would stop, because we're in the 21st century, today politicians wear a suit and a tie. They don't do these things. Yes, they do. Nothing really has changed. I mean, the clothing has changed a little bit, the style has changed, but you still have war, you still have brutality, you still have killings all over the world. And look at the Jew, and look at Israel. They're still pursuing them. They're still persecuting them. And in Europe, there's still decrees. There's still this anti-Semitism in the air. Why? Well, the why for anti-Semitism, as I said before, is for all kinds of reasons. But the point is, not that you can't trust anybody. That's besides the point. It's that there are people out there who are capable of murder, capable of being brutal, capable of not seeing the truth, not wanting to know the truth. And David HaMelech says, because of that, please come and help. Because no United Nations, no NATO, none of that will help. So who's left? Hashem, only you. So we ask that HaKadosh Baruch Hu speed it up. In other words, come quickly to our help, because we recognize that we on our own cannot do it. We recognize that we need Him. And therefore, David HaMelech says we need to pray to Him and to ask Him continuously that Hashem should come out and save us.
Amen.
Amen.